Guys, welcome back to Based MMA. This is my final video for 2023. This is going to be an amazing video. Before I start with predicting every UFC champion at the end of 2024, make sure to click on the like button, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy my videos, guys. I appreciate the support. Let's try to get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year, guys. This is going to be an amazing video. This is a fun one. So let's get started with predicting every UFC champion at the end of 2024. And I'm going to start with the women divisions. I'm going to start off with the strawweight division. I'm going to go with Tatiana Suarez to win the title. I think she's going to fight. She's going to beat Amanda Lemos pretty decisively by decision. And then Yang Wei Li will fight Yang Nan, most likely. Yang Wei Li will win, and then Tatiana Suarez versus Wei Li will happen sometime later in the year, and I think Tatiana Suarez is going to get the better of Wei Li. So I'm going to go with Tatiana Suarez to be the champion of the strawweight division at the end of 2024. Now moving on to the flyweight division, this is an interesting one. I think the UFC is going to end up making Alexa Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko. I think Alexa Grasso is going to end up winning. Even if Valentina Shevchenko ends up winning that fight, I don't see her staying for much longer. I think Valentina will most likely retire if she ends up beating Alexa Grasso in the trilogy. But I'm going to go with Alexa Grasso winning the trilogy. And then Manon Fiorot is going to fight Erin Blanchfield in March. And I think Manon Fiorot is going to beat Erin Blanchfield, man. Erin Blanchfield is very good. She's one of my favorite female fighters, but I just think her striking is not that great. And somebody like Manon Fiorot, who's a great kickboxer, who just beat somebody like Rose Namajunas. I get it. Rose Namajunas is a strawweight. She's not typically a flyweight fighter. I still think that Manon Fiorot is going to be able to beat Alexa Grasso or Valentina Shevchenko. So I'm going to go with Manon Fiorot to be the champion of the women's flyweight division at the end of 2024. Now moving on to the bantamweight division, I don't really care about this division. I think whoever ends up winning between Raquel Pennington and Mayra Bueno Silva is probably going to be the champion for the rest of the year. So I'm going to go with Mayra Bueno Silva to win that fight. I think she's going to be the bantamweight champion for the rest of the year. She'll probably end up defeating Juliana Pena sometime later in the year. And that'll be that. Now let's move on to the men's flyweight division, guys. This is an interesting one. Right now, the current champion is Alexander Pantoja. And I'm going to go on a hot take. I think Alexander Pantoja is going to be a very dominant champion. I think he's going to be champion. I think that what's going to end up happening is that he's going to end up fighting Manel Kape sometime mid 2024. I think he'll fight Manel Kape. Manel Kape is going to fight Nicholas. What's his last name? That fighter, he's going to fight some guy in January. I think he's going to end up winning that fight, and I think he's going to get a title shot. And Brandon Moreno versus Amir Abbasi is probably the number one contender. I do think that if Brandon Moreno wins that fight, which is most probable, I don't see the UFC quickly rebooking Brandon Moreno versus Alexander Pantoja, especially because Alexander Pantoja has 3 wins over him. I get it. One was in The Ultimate Fighter, but he has 2 wins over Brandon Moreno. Pretty dominant wins as well. So I think they might give Manel Kape that title shot. And I think a fight between Manel Kape and Alexander Pantoja, as much as Manel Kape has been improving, I think Alexander Pantoja is just too good right now. And I think Alexander Pantoja is going to be the flyweight champion at the end of 2024. Now moving on to the bantamweight division, man. This is an interesting one as well, man. I've been going back and forth. It depends. I'm going to give you 2 scenarios. Chito Vera versus Sean O'Malley is the next bantamweight title fight. I'm leaning Chito Vera, guys. I'm leaning Chito Vera to win a decision or a late TKO. I just think Chito Vera is so durable and so powerful. And we've seen that the way guys beat Chito Vera is by wrestling. And I don't think Sean O'Malley is going to wrestle. I really don't see that in his game plan. He's going to have to point fight. He's going to have to put an Israel Adesanya, Leon Edwards-esque performance against Chito Vera if he really wants to win. And I just don't see it happening, man. I mean, maybe I could see a scenario where maybe Sean O'Malley is able to, kind of outstrike him in those early rounds. And as Chito Vera starts to get momentum, because I do think he has the better cardio out of the two, then maybe Sean O'Malley could do just enough to survive and win a decision. But right now, I'm leaning Chito Vera, and I think the winner of the winner of Sean O'Malley versus Chito Vera is most likely going to fight the winner of Merab versus Cejudo. And I think Merab might end up winning that fight. So I'm going to go with Merab Dvalishvili. I can't say his last name. Sorry, guys. I think Merab's going to be... I don't know. The reason why I'm not so confident on Merab being the champion is because if Sean O'Malley is able to defeat Chito Vera, I think Sean O'Malley versus Merab is a great stylistic fight for Sean O'Malley. And I could see Sean O'Malley knocking out Merab. But if Cejudo beats Merab and Sean O'Malley wins, I could see Sean O'Malley still being the champion at the end of 2024. Now, if Chito Vera wins and Cejudo wins, I think Cejudo, even that one's tough. Because Cejudo's so small. Wow. I think the Bantamweight division is going to be interesting. I have to pick someone. I'm going to go with Sean O'Malley still being a champion. I'm going to say he wins a close decision against Chito Vera, and then he fights Merab sometime later in the year, and he knocks out Merab. That's my hot take. I think Sean O'Malley is going to be the champion for the Bantamweight division at the end of 2024. Now, moving on to the Featherweight division. This is also a very interesting one. I think Ilia Topuria will defeat Alexander Volkanovski in February. I just think that, this sport is too cruel. And Alexander Volkanovski is coming off a knockout loss, and he's kind of making a quick turnaround to fight in February against a power puncher, somebody who has great boxing, very well-rounded like Ilia Topuria. The fact that he's a similar size and height as Volkanovski, I think that's going to help Ilia Topuria because Volkanovski's kind of used to fighting these taller fighters. And I think the fact that they're the same height is going to help Ilia Topuria find that chin quicker. I do think that Volkanovski has a good chance of winning that fight, but like I said, I just think the sport is way too cruel, and I think Ilia Topuria is going to end up finishing Volkanovski. And I'm leaning, I think the UFC might give Volkanovski a rematch just because he's been such a dominant champion in the featherweight division. So if Ilia Topuria versus Volkanovski 2 happens sometime later in 2024, I do think that Ilia Topuria would win and would be the champion of the featherweight division at the end of 2024. Now, if the UFC decides not to give Volkanovski a rematch after that loss, I think that they most likely will do Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. And I think Ilia Topuria would beat Max Holloway right now. I do think so. Maybe I'm overrating Ilia Topuria just a tad bit. It depends, man. It depends, because if Max Holloway moves up, and let's say he fights a Justin Gaethje, that's a lot of damage. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of damage. That's why it's very interesting. It's going to come down to how the fights turn out early 2024 to really have a good idea of who's going to be champion at the end of 2024. But I'm going to go with Ilia Topuria. I think that's more of a safe pick. I even think if Volkanovski ends up beating Ilia Topuria, I could see him retiring. No, Volkanovski's never going to retire. What am I saying? Volkanovski's not going to retire. But I do think Volkanovski's going to lose. I think Volkanovski's going to lose, man. I don't know. I think that chin's been cracked. I think Ilia Topuria's going to win. And then they're going to give Volkanovski the rematch. And then Ilia Topuria would beat Volkanovski again. So I'm going to go with featherweight champion. It's going to be Ilia Topuria. Now, moving on to the lightweight division. I think Islam Makhachev versus Justin Gaethje is the most likely fight next. And I think, even though it's a dangerous fight for Islam Makhachev because Gaethje seems to be improving on the feet and he's more patient these days, I still think Islam Makhachev could win this fight if he takes it to the ground. And I still think he's improving with his striking. That's still going to give Gaethje some problems. So I'm going to go with Islam winning that fight against Justin Gaethje sometime early 2024. And then I do think that Islam will most likely fight the winner of Charles or Arman Tsarukyan sometime in the summer, maybe like September, August, which I think it's most probable, in my opinion, that Islam versus Charles 2 happens sometime mid-2024, and I think Islam most likely wins. But I will not be surprised if Charles Oliveira pulls the upset. And I think that even if Gaethje, let's say he beats Islam, I think Gaethje would retire, to be honest. I think he would have already accomplished. So I don't even see Gaethje being the champion, even if he wins a title at the end of 2024. I'm gonna go with Islam Makhachev, and I'm gonna go with Islam Makhachev still being the champion of 2024. I could see him losing. I don't know why. I just have a weird feeling that he might lose, but I think most likely, even like let's say if Armin Tsarukyan beats Charles, I think Islam will end up defeating Armin Tsarukyan, and I think Islam will still be the lightweight champion. Now moving on to the welterweight division, this is also a very interesting one. I think that Leon versus Bilal is next. I think Leon will win a close decision, so he'll still be the champion. And then they're going to book Shavkat versus Leon for early fall. And I'm going to go with Shavkat Ramonov to be the champion of the welterweight division at the end of 2024. I think he'll have a fight booked between JDM or Ian Gary sometime January 2025. I think that's most likely what's going to happen. I could see this happening as well. I could see Leon versus Bilal happening. Leon winning a close decision. Maybe Islam Makhachev puts an impressive performance over Charles Oliveira or over Justin Gaethje. And they give Islam Makhachev the opportunity to challenge for the welterweight belt. And if Islam Makhachev fights a Leon Edwards, I think Islam Makhachev might be the champion of the welterweight division. So if anybody has a chance at double champ, I think it's going to be Islam Makhachev. But it depends how active he's going to be. And it also depends on when he ends up fighting Justin Gaethje. And if he's going to, if the UFC is going to give him a title shot at 170 after that Gaethje fight or after that Charles fight. So it just kind of depends. But just to play it safe, I think Shavkat Ramonov will be the champion of the welterweight division. I think Shavkat Ramonov is probably going to fight a Kamaru Usman early 2024, which is going to grant him that title shot to fight the winner of Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad. So even if Bilal Muhammad wins, I think Bilal Muhammad will lose to someone like Shavkat Ramonov. I think Leon will also most likely lose to someone like Shavkat Ramonov. Leon has no grit or no killer instinct, so I don't see him knocking out Shavkat Ramonov or outpointing him. So I'm going to go with Shavkat Ramonov to be the champion of the welterweight division. Now moving on to the middleweight division. This is also a very tough one because it all depends on what the UFC does with Israel Adesanya. Now, the next middleweight title fight is a month away. Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis. It's a very hard fight to predict, guys. I've been going back and forth. Some days I feel Sean Strickland's going to do enough. And the reason why I'm going back and forth is because I think Sean Strickland has the better cardio through a 5-round fight. And Dricus du Plessis, he's a very muscular guy. And something, I don't know, I just get the feeling that Dricus du Plessis, I could see him gassing out in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round and kind of slowing down. Especially if Sean Strickland is able to survive Dricus's pressure in those first 2 rounds. I could just see Sean Strickland start to beat up a tired Dricus du Plessis and Sean Strickland maybe getting a late TKO or just winning a decision. I could also see Dricus du Plessis chinning Sean Strickland in those early rounds. It's a very hard fight. I'm going to go with, this is tough because I haven't made a prediction. I'm going to go with, I want to say Sean Strickland. Fuck. I'm going to go with, I think Dricus is going to win. I think Dricus du Plessis is going to win. And what should happen next is that Khamzat Chimaev should fight the winner. But I don't know if the UFC is going to do that. I have a feeling, I have a suspicion that the UFC might give Israel Adesanya the winner of Sean Strickland versus Dricus, and they're going to make Khamzat Chimaev versus Jared Cannonier. Anybody else get that feeling? I have a suspicion that they will. And if Dricus du Plessis ends up beating Sean Strickland, I think the UFC is going to look to make Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya because it's a huge fight. And that fight's scary. I don't know why I find that fight scary for Dricus. I could see him getting caught. You know, because Israel Adesanya is such a great counter striker. I don't know. I'm going to go with, I don't know who's going to be the champion of the middleweight division. I think it's going to be musical chairs in the middleweight division. I could see a scenario where Dricus beats Strickland, and then Israel Adesanya fights Dricus. Adesanya gets the belt again, and then maybe Chimaev or Jared Cannonier fight for the title, and then maybe I'm gonna go with Hamza Chimaev. I know that he's kind of lost a bit of hype, but I think stylistically, if Dricus wins, it's a harder fight for Chimaev. I think if Strickland wins, it's an easier fight for Chimaev, just stylistically. Man, this is a tough one. I'm gonna go with crap. I'm gonna go with Dricus du Plessis to be the champion of the end of 2024. I'm not confident. Very low confident. Very low confident. I just could see the UFC doing some sketchy stuff with Israel Adesanya and giving him another title shot, even though he doesn't deserve it. But realistically, Dricus wins. Let's say Dricus wins. Hamza Chimaev fights Israel Adesanya. The winner fights Dricus. Most likely, I think Hamza Chimaev would beat Israel Adesanya. Dricus du Plessis fights Hamza Chimaev. And I think Dricus has a very good chance of beating Hamza Chimaev, to be honest. I just think he's very well-rounded. He has great striking, pressure fighter. I still have some questions about Dricus. I really do. I need to see how he does against Sean Strickland. I know a lot of people are overrating Dricus du Plessis because of that Robert Whittaker fight, and I get it. It was a very impressive performance, but I still want to see how he does in those later rounds. I want to see him fight another. I need to see how he does against Sean Strickland before I put all my eggs in Dricus du Plessis, because a lot of people are saying that this guy is so good, and I feel like he's become a little bit overrated. Like, hold on to your horses. Let's see how he does against Sean Strickland, because Sean Strickland is a great fighter as well. But I'm going to go with Dricus du Plessis just for the sake of it, just because I think he's a little bit more well-rounded than Sean Strickland. And I think he's a worse stylistic fight for Hamza Chimaev. So I'm going to go with Dricus du Plessis to be the middleweight champion. Now, moving on to the light heavyweight division, I'm going to go Jamal Hill. I think Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill is next. I think Jamal Hill will win by KO. And I think Jamal Hill will most likely fight the winner of Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker sometime later in the year. I could see it in the Abu Dhabi card. And then I think Pereira will, like, if he loses that fight, he'll probably fight Yuri versus Rakic or maybe Adesanya. But I think most likely Jamal Hill will fight Magomed Ankalaev at the end of the year. And I think Jamal Hill will probably get the better of Magomed Ankalaev. I think that Jamal Hill showed to have great takedown defense against Glover Teixeira. And I think he's a lot more explosive. Maybe not as technical as Magomed Ankalaev, but I think he's more explosive on the feet and has more power than Magomed Ankalaev. So I think Jamal Hill will end up winning that fight. And I think he'll be the champion at the end of 2024. Now, moving on to the heavyweight division, this is probably the easiest division. I'm gonna go with Tom Aspinall. I think Tom Aspinall will probably defend his interim belt against Cyril Gane sometime later in 2024 in London. I think Tom Aspinall will most likely win that fight. John Jones versus Stipe Miocic will have their retirement fight sometime later in the year. And then the UFC will look to make Tom Aspinall versus Jailton Almeida for the title. I think Jailton Almeida will end up defeating Curtis Blades. And I think Tom Aspinall will win. I think that's a safe pick. I think Tom Aspinall will be the champion of the heavyweight division. Very interesting, guys. Now that I'm talking about it, I think this is going to be an interesting year. I could see a lot of upsets as well. But anyway, guys, those are the UFC champions that I'm predicting for the end of 2024. Let me know who you think is going to be champion at the end of 2024 for every division, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to like and subscribe. I hope you guys have an amazing New Year's, and I'll see you guys in 2024.